The hall of the Orion Accord was larger than any human city square. Its ceiling curved like a night sky made of living crystal, shifting colors as hundreds of species spoke at once. Gravity was carefully balanced so that beings from different worlds could stand, float, or coil without discomfort. This place was meant to show equality. In truth, it showed power. Humans stood at the lowest tier of the chamber. They had been invited late to the galactic stage, and everyone knew it. Most species in the room were thousands of years old. Their empires had risen and fallen before Earth had learned to write. To them, humanity was loud, fast, and fragile. Interesting, perhaps. Dangerous, maybe, but never important. Commander Elias Ward stood still among the human delegation. He wore a simple dark uniform, no medals, no decorations. His hair was short, already showing gray at the sides, though he was not old. His face carried the calm of someone who had seen worse places than this room. He did not speak. He watched. The debate in the chamber was not truly about humans. It was about borders, resources, and control of the frontier systems near human space. The older empires spoke as if Earth was a loose object drifting between giants, something to be claimed before it caused trouble. Elias listened as one delegate with a voice like grinding stone called humans statistically unstable. Another, a floating being of light, suggested that human colonies should be placed under protective supervision. No one asked the humans what they thought. At the highest platform stood Ambassador Sariel of the Velari. She was impossible to ignore. The Velari were an ancient species, tall and elegant, with skin like pale silver and eyes that reflected light instead of absorbing it. They were known as keepers of tradition, neutral arbiters in war, and masters of diplomacy. When Sariel entered a room, others listened. She wore a long ceremonial dress woven from living threads, shifting softly with her movements. The dress was a symbol of neutrality. As long as a Velari ambassador wore it, they belonged to no side. Sariel had been silent for most of the session. Now she stepped forward. The hall quieted almost at once. Voices faded. Even the crystal ceiling seemed to still. Sariel's gaze moved across the chamber, passing emperors, warlords, and ancient minds without pause. Then her eyes stopped. They locked onto Elias Ward. The moment stretched. Elias felt it like pressure on his chest. He did not look away. Years of combat and command had taught him one thing above all else: never drop your eyes first. A ripple of surprise passed through the room. No one remembered the last time a Velari ambassador had directly addressed a human, let alone looked at one like that. Sariel raised one slender hand. Then, with a calm, deliberate motion, she released the clasp at her shoulder. The living threads of her ceremonial dress loosened and fell away, dissolving into light before touching the floor. A sharp intake of breath echoed through the chamber. What was revealed was not flesh meant for display. It was history. Her body bore glowing markings etched into her skin, ancient symbols that pulsed softly with energy. Along her arms and back were scars, clean and precise, each one a record of battle. Embedded along her spine was a narrow line of living technology, fused seamlessly with her body. Every elder species in the room recognized those signs, war-marked. The Velari had abandoned the warrior path tens of thousands of years ago. Their warriors were thought to be extinct, their oaths retired, their traditions sealed away. To reveal war markings in this chamber was unthinkable. To do so without shame, without fear, was a declaration. Elias felt the weight of the room shift. He did not fully understand the symbols, but he understood the silence. This was not a gesture meant for spectacle. It was law. Sariel spoke, and her voice carried without amplification. "By ancient right," she said, "I set aside neutrality." The chamber erupted into chaos. Delegates shouted, translators struggled to keep up. Some species recoiled, others leaned forward in disbelief. A towering reptilian lord slammed his clawed hand against a console. "You cannot do this," he roared. "The Velari are bound." "I am bound," Sariel interrupted calmly, "to truth." Her eyes never left Elias. Elias felt every gaze in the chamber turn toward him. Humans beside him shifted nervously. One of the diplomats whispered his name, panic clear in her voice. Sariel continued. "Long ago," she said, "my people swore an oath. We would follow those who stand against extinction when all logic says surrender. We would serve those who protect life, even when no reward waits at the end." She took one step closer to the edge of the platform. "Humans have already done this." Laughter broke out from several sections of the hall. It was sharp, mocking. A mistake, said a mechanical envoy. Humans have fought only minor wars, their reach is limited. Sariel turned her head slightly, just enough to acknowledge the voice. You call it minor, she said, because you never saw what they faced. The lights in the chamber dimmed. A projection bloomed in the air between the platforms. Elias recognized the image instantly. A dark region of space, distorted and wrong. A place where sensors failed and stars vanished. Humans called it the Black Veil. Years ago, something had emerged from that region. Not an empire, not a fleet. A presence. Silent, consuming, spreading. Entire colonies had gone dark. Species near the veil had retreated, sealed borders, erased star maps. Humans had done something else. They had gone in. The projection showed human ships, small and crude compared to galactic standards, burning hard toward the darkness. It showed emergency evacuations, last stands, and sacrifices never reported to the wider galaxy because no one had asked. Sariel's voice softened, but it did not weaken. They did not win because they were strongest, she said. They won because they refused to accept loss as the final answer. The projection ended. Silence returned, heavier than before. Elias swallowed. He had been there, not at the center, but close enough. He remembered the fear, the orders that felt like death sentences, the knowledge that no one was coming to help. Humans had survived the Black Veil, barely. They had sealed it at a cost so high that Earth's leaders chose silence over celebration. They rebuilt quietly. They moved on. Sariel stepped down from the platform. Each step echoed. She stopped directly in front of Elias, close enough that he could see faint reflections of himself in her eyes. Commander Elias Ward, she said, speaking his name perfectly. You stood in the veil. You chose to hold the line when retreat was easier. Elias inclined his head slightly. I followed orders, he said simply. A few beings scoffed. Sariel's lips curved just a little. That, she said, is what makes humans dangerous. She turned back to the chamber. By ancient law, she announced, I claim alliance with humanity, not as rulers, not as masters, as partners. Outrage exploded, threats were shouted, sanctions were declared on the spot. Some delegates stormed out, others whispered urgently into private channels. The human delegation stood frozen. Alliance with the Velari was unthinkable. It would change everything. It would also paint a target on Earth larger than any before. Elias felt the weight settle fully now. Sariel looked at him one last time. This is only the beginning, she said quietly, meant for him alone. Far beyond the chamber, at the edge of known space, engines flared to life. And the galaxy began to move. The news spread across the galaxy faster than any official transmission. A Velari ambassador had abandoned neutrality. Not quietly, not in private, but in the heart of the Orion Accord in front of every major power. Within hours, human space was flooded with signals. Some were polite requests for clarification. Others were threats wrapped in careful language. A few were open warnings. On Earth, the High Council called an emergency session. Commander Elias Ward stood in a secure briefing room, watching the stars through a reinforced window. From this distance, space looked calm. It always did before things went wrong. Behind him, screens lit up with the faces of leaders, admirals, and advisors. Their expressions ranged from shock to barely controlled fear. You understand what this means, one counselor said. The Velari have never taken sides. Not once in recorded history. Elias nodded. I understand. Another voice cut in. They didn't just take sides, they chose us. Why? All eyes turned to him. Elias took a breath. Because we didn't run, he said. When the Black Veil opened, everyone else pulled back. We went in. That was survival, someone argued. Not heroism. Elias looked at the screen. Sometimes, he said, there's no difference. Silence followed. Across the stars, reactions were already turning dangerous. The Car Dominion mobilized fleets near human borders, claiming defensive positioning. The Syndicate of Nine froze trade routes that Earth depended on. Even smaller powers began testing human defenses, probing for weakness. And behind it all, a quieter threat moved. In the shadows of deep space, ancient sensors awakened. Records long sealed were opened. The name war-marked Velari appeared in systems that had not been accessed for millennia. On a Velari world far from Earth, Sariel stood alone in a chamber of memory. Tall pillars surrounded her, each one carved with the names of fallen warriors. Light flowed through the walls like slow water. An elder approached, his form bent by age but his eyes sharp. You have changed everything, he said. Sariel did not turn. Everything was already changing, she replied. The council will not forgive this, the elder warned. You broke neutrality, you bound our people to a young species. Sariel finally faced him. We bound ourselves long ago, she said calmly. When we swore to stand against extinction, the elder's voice lowered. The humans do not know the full truth. They will, Sariel said, sooner than they wish. Back near human space, Elias boarded a military transport bound for a forward station. He was no longer just an observer or advisor. The galaxy had forced his role to change. As the ship moved into jump space, alarms sounded across the bridge. Multiple fleet signatures, an officer reported. Non-human, large scale. Elias moved forward. Who? The officer hesitated. Unknown configuration, but power readings are high. The stars twisted, then snapped back into place. Outside the viewport, dozens of ships hung in formation. They were massive, dark, and angular, built for intimidation rather than beauty. Elias recognized the design from classified files. Precursor warforms. These were relics from ancient conflicts, vessels designed to erase civilizations. Most were believed destroyed or dormant. A cold realization settled in his chest. Someone had woken them. A transmission cut through all channels. The signal was old, layered with protocols no human system had been designed to read. The ship's AI struggled, then translated. This region is under correction, the voice said. Withdraw or be erased. Elias did not respond immediately. He looked around the bridge. The crew was tense but steady. Humans had learned to live with fear. Open a channel to Earth, he ordered, and to the Velari. Minutes later, Sariel's image appeared beside Earth's command authority. Her expression was unreadable, but her eyes sharpened as she saw the ships outside. So, she said quietly, they have chosen to move early. You knew this was coming, Elias said. Yes, Sariel replied, but not this soon. Earth's admiral leaned forward. Explain now. Sariel inclined her head. Long before your species evolved, she said, the galaxy faced a force that sought order through annihilation. They believed chaos was weakness. They erased anything unpredictable. Like humans, someone muttered. Yes, Sariel agreed. Like humans. She continued. Many species submitted, others were erased. A few resisted. The Velari were among them. We fought. We survived. But the cost was everything. The screen shifted, showing ancient battlefields, shattered stars, and silent worlds. We won by becoming neutral, Sariel said. By convincing the galaxy that conflict itself was the enemy, we hid the truth. We buried our warriors. We waited. For what? The admiral asked. For a species that would fight not for dominance, Sariel said, but for survival of others, a species that would walk into darkness alone if needed. Her gaze moved to Elias. When humans entered the Black Veil, she said, they woke something old, the same force. It has been watching you since. Outside, the precursor ships shifted formation. Weapons charged. Earth's admiral clenched his jaw. Can we win? Sariel answered honestly. Not alone. Elias straightened. Then we don't fight alone. He looked at the tactical display. Human ships were few but fast, flexible, built with layers of backup systems and crews trained to adapt when plans failed. Send the signal, Elias said. The one we never wanted to use. The admiral hesitated. That will expose everything. Yes, Elias said. That's the point. Across human space, hidden relays activated. Old beacons lit up near forgotten worlds. Refugee species, minor powers, and survivors of ancient losses received a message. Humans were not asking for obedience. They were asking for help. The precursor fleet advanced. The first shots were devastating. Human shields flared and failed. Ships were lost. Lives ended in flashes of light. Elias watched, jaw tight, as reports came in. He did not shout. He did not panic. Redirect, he ordered. Use debris. Break formation. Human ships scattered, moving unpredictably, forcing the massive warforms to turn and adjust. Precision became difficult. The battlefield grew chaotic. Sariel watched closely. They fight like water, she murmured. Then new signals appeared. Smaller fleets dropped out of jump space. Old rivals, former enemies, species humans had once helped quietly without treaties or rewards. One by one, they joined the fight. The precursor fleet hesitated. For the first time in thousands of years, uncertainty entered their calculations. Elias allowed himself one slow breath. This isn't over, he said. No, Sariel agreed. But now they remember what fear feels like. Far away in the depths beyond the Black Veil, something vast and ancient shifted its attention. And it began to prepare. The battle raged for hours and then days. Stars became markers in a deadly chessboard, each flicker of light a potential strike, each shadow a threat. The human fleet, small but agile, wove through the precursor armada with precision that no alien fleet could predict. Commander Elias Ward remained on the bridge of the lead ship, eyes scanning every readout, every blip calculating moves that had no manual, no historical record to guide them. Humans were always improvisers. It was their survival trait, their hidden weapon. While other species relied on overwhelming force or ancient protocols, humans relied on intuition, adaptability, and a stubborn refusal to give up. Every maneuver made by Elias and his crews was unpredictable, forcing the massive, ancient warforms to overextend, misfire, and falter. Sariel stood beside him, her presence a silent anchor. Even with her war-marked body and centuries of experience, she watched humans fight with astonishment and respect. This was not about raw power. This was about ingenuity, courage, and a kind of determination that machines could not calculate. "Commander," one of his officers reported, "the enemy is reorganizing, they're adjusting formations, their energy shields are adapting faster than expected." Elias didn't flinch. "Then we change faster, break into small squads, hit their weak points, draw them out." Sariel's eyes gleamed. Humans fight like no other species. They don't just act, they think in motion. They don't just survive, they adapt. Elias allowed a faint nod. "We do what we must, no surrender, no hesitation." Across the battlefield, the precursor fleet began to fracture. Their calculations, designed for efficiency, could not keep pace with unpredictable movement. Human ships used debris fields as cover, turned environmental hazards into traps, and lured enemy vessels into collisions with their own kind. Unexpectedly, reinforcements arrived. Fleets from minor species, long thought insignificant, entered jump space. Some had fled when humans first arrived at the frontier, hiding from older empires. Now, inspired by the bravery and resolve of humans and by Sariel's intervention, they had chosen to fight alongside Earth. Elias allowed himself a brief smile. Unity in the galaxy had never come so easily, but now it was real. Species that had once mocked humanity now moved as one force. They were not humans alone. They were a coalition, a living proof of Sariel's claim that strength lay in courage and collaboration, not heritage or technology. The first of the precursor warforms fell. It happened not with a single overwhelming strike, but through coordinated attacks, patience, and relentless pressure. Smaller human ships had bypassed their shields, targeting engines, energy conduits, and command cores. One by one, the colossal vessels lost cohesion, breaking apart under their own momentum. Even as victories mounted, the fight remained brutal. Losses were high. Human ships burned, crews were lost, and the galaxy's ancient machinery of war claimed many lives. But humanity and its allies refused to yield. Every ship destroyed was a message. Survival would not be taken quietly, domination would be challenged, and the galaxy would not forget the species that dared to fight when all odds were against them. Elias glanced at Sariel. Her calm demeanor had not wavered, but her eyes were alive with emotion. "They called us weak," she said. "They thought we were nothing, and yet here we are." Elias' voice was steady. "We're just humans, but we've never run from what needed to be done." Sariel's lips curved in a small, approving smile. "And that is why the galaxy will remember you." The tide of battle shifted further when the precursor fleet attempted a desperate final maneuver. They activated a massive energy wave designed to annihilate the human coalition in one strike. Even seasoned admirals and alien commanders shuddered at the raw force. Elias' mind worked fast. He coordinated his fleet into a dispersal formation, guiding ships through natural gravitational fields, asteroid clusters, and energy anomalies. Every calculation, every maneuver bought seconds, and seconds were the only currency humans could rely on. The energy wave struck, tearing through empty space. It destroyed some ships outright. It damaged others. But the coordinated movements allowed the majority to survive, regroup, and counterattack. Then came the decisive moment. Elias directed the human and allied fleets to focus on the precursor command vessel, the core of their formation. Sariel joined the tactical interface, combining her war-marked abilities with human strategy. Together, they executed a series of maneuvers that no single species could have achieved. The command vessel was overwhelmed, systems overloaded, and at last it erupted in a controlled implosion. Silence fell. The remaining precursor vessels, leaderless and confused, retreated into the far reaches of the galaxy. They did not return. The human coalition did not cheer immediately. The battle had cost too much. But slowly, acknowledgement spread among the crews. They had survived against impossible odds. They had held the line when extinction had seemed inevitable. They had proven themselves. Back on the flagship, Elias stood in the observation deck, staring at the stars. The fleet behind him began to reorganize, tending to damaged ships, recovering the wounded and salvaging supplies. Sariel approached. "You did more than survive," she said softly. "You have changed the rules of this galaxy." Elias shook his head. "We just did what we had to do." "That's all humans ever do." She looked at him, eyes sharp but filled with admiration. "Perhaps, but your all humans ever do has made even the oldest powers reconsider their assumptions. You have earned respect, not through dominance but through action." A transmission came from Earth. Messages from leaders, citizens, and allied species poured in, praising the human fleet's courage, strategy, and sacrifice. Humanity's name, once whispered with doubt, was now spoken with awe across countless worlds. Elias allowed himself a moment of reflection. Humanity had always been underestimated. But in this moment, they had shown what they could do when cornered, when pushed, when forced to rise above fear. It was not raw power that had won the day. It was ingenuity, courage, and the refusal to surrender. Sariel placed a hand lightly on his shoulder. "The galaxy will remember this. Your story and the story of your people will be taught for centuries." Elias nodded. "Let them. Just make sure they understand the truth. We fight not for glory, but for life, for survival, and for each other." She smiled faintly. "And that, Commander, is why humans own the room." He looked out at the stars again. The battle was over, but the galaxy had changed forever. The alliances forged in fire, the respect earned in the void, and the courage displayed against impossible odds had shifted the balance of power. Humanity was no longer underestimated. Humanity was no longer overlooked. Humanity had earned its place, not as rulers, but as equals. The fleets began to make their way home. Humans and allies worked side by side, sharing resources, tending to the wounded, and preparing for the challenges that would inevitably come next. But for the first time, humanity was not just surviving. They were leading by example, showing that courage, adaptability, and integrity could defy even the oldest fears. Elias remained at the observation deck until the last fleet ship disappeared from view. He turned to Sariel. "What now?" She looked out as well, thoughtful. "Now we rebuild. Now we prepare, and now we make sure that when the galaxy tests humanity again, it knows we will stand." For Elias, the weight of responsibility was immense. But for the first time, it was paired with something new. Recognition, respect, and the undeniable proof that humans, small and fragile though they might have seemed, could achieve greatness on a cosmic scale. And so, in a galaxy that had long underestimated them, humanity's story began anew. One that would be remembered for generations. One that would inspire others to rise, to fight, and to adapt when all odds seemed against them. One that would forever mark the day a species proved that courage, action, and integrity could shift the fate of worlds. Elias Ward took a deep breath, the stars reflected in his eyes. Humanity had survived the impossible, and the galaxy would never forget it.